Thank you for staying here on Joy News Desk. Now, Ghanaians continue to suffer from the effects of illegal mining, with water bodies being polluted and aquatic life destroyed. Many have stepped up the campaign against what many citizens refer to as galamsey. Last week, for instance, the Minerals Commission stated it was considering a suspension of the issuance of new licenses for small-scale mining to enable an overhaul of the country's mining sector as part of efforts to deal with illegal mining. But how far have we reached with efforts to deal with the menace? Joining me in studio is Mr. Int'l Terrier. He is the Deputy Chief Inspector of Mines in charge of policy at the Minerals Commission. Thank you, sir, for joining us to have this conversation. And first of all, many have wondered why the commission is coming out now. Isn't it too late?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's too late. You know, if we trace the history of even, let me say, small-scale mining in the country, it dates back to hundreds of years ago. Those times, the activities of the small-scale miners were not as destructive as you see now. You know, all the past chiefs, the ornaments that they were wearing, those ones were actually made possible through the efforts of small-scale miners. But it's in recent times, particularly with the influx of foreigners who actually brought this heavy equipment, that has really causes this kind of menace, which is giving headache to almost everybody in the country. You know, if we take a water body, for instance, 30 meters on either side of the banks, where the water actually traverses a gold deposit, you get all these places to be very, very rich. They tend to be heavily mineralized with the gold. And if we look at the minerals conditions of granting the licenses to the small-scale miners, 100 meters on either side of the bank is actually a no-go area for small-scale mining activities. And this particular area, which is an exclusive zone, this is where the chiefs and those who hold authority in this country, they rather push these illegal miners to work for them. So,
and so, are you in any case suggesting that that is conflicting your work as a Minerals Commission?
It is. It's not only conflicting our work as Minerals Commission, but it's also even conflicting with the regulations of the Water Resources Commission.
But before you go on, Mr. Terrier, is the Commission overwhelmed by this situation?
I would say
is it beyond you?
Totally overwhelmed. For the fact that the Commission, we can only report on incidents. We don't have the power to cause arrests. We don't have the power to prosecute anybody. So when we identify these areas where this menace is actually taking place, we report to the law enforcement agencies. And then they then take it up from there.
And is the Commission's work centralized? Do you have people on the ground in the places where these activities occur?
Yeah, we do.
And are they enough to deal with the situation? For example, in terms of noticing for who has the license to operate or not, and even for those who have the license to operate, whether they are abiding by the rules of mining in this country?
Good. I would say that the Commission's work is not centralized in Accra. We have offices, we have regional offices in Koforidua, we have one in Kumasi, we have one in Takoradi. Then we also have district offices in Asimfosu, Dunkwao, Asankregwa, Takwa, Bebiani, Bolga, Wa, Konongo. So we have actually men in all these places, but as to the numbers, for me, I would say they are woefully inadequate. So even one of the proposals that we are trying to come out with is that we are going to appeal to the National Service Secretariat. This time for those graduates who have actually done the earth sciences. Earth science, I'm talking about mining engineering, geology, mineral processing, surveying, environmental sciences. Normally, most of these people are actually taken to schools to go and teach. This time we are going to propose that at least all the district assemblies where mining takes place, At least they should have about 10 of such personnel. Then together with our mining district office, we will then be able to actually work out a modality so that we can have a lot of coverage for these our men.
Let's talk about the newest directive that is you deciding to hold on with issuing new licenses to small-scale miners. How far with that?
Yeah, I must say that in a chaotic stage, I think the best approach to do is hold on, examine, and then analyze before you move forward. So now, I think our CEO, Dr. Tony Obin, recently made a statement that the commission is actually going to put a moratorium on the grant of licenses to the small-scale miners, so that we will re-examine the whole process before we move forward with this.
But the issue, Mr. Terrier, has been that people don't even have licenses in the first place to mine, and they are in our water bodies and they are on our lands trading palm plantations to mine. They don't. The argument is that they don't even have the licenses in the first place, and they're already mining. So what really will this do to help the situation?
Good, thank you. I think that is where the challenge has been. That is a no-go area that you have called on, that you will not allow anybody to mine there. And incidentally, this is where I would say most of our chiefs, because they claim to be the allotted owners of the land. So here they allow people to go in and then do the illegal mining. I must say that going to do illegal mining, it's not like me taking a machete just to go and then harvest a plantain and run away. They stay there for months, if not years. So for me, and I think it's a very strong thinking of the CEO and the entire commission now is that we are going to appeal to the commander-in-chief to actually declare all the water bodies a military zone. Once you do that, because I know that the minister actually gave an ultimatum, I think for about 3 weeks, the days will soon come to pass. I think 3 days before the elapse of this ultimatum, I will plead and still request that the military will actually do low flying over these water bodies, and even if anything at all, even drop leaflets to all these people and tell them that a day after this, now we have taken over. Okay. And I know that for a military man, nobody actually vote to bring him to where he is. So for them, that kind of political view is actually taken off their heads. Okay. And then they will act. I know the strategies and the tactics that the military have to act on this.
Mr. Terrier, there's more I have to ask as regards the issuance of licenses and whether they went through the right processes, for example, going to Parliament and all that and getting parliamentary approval. But we've been joined in the studio by Bright Apia. He's the Executive Director of Child's Right International. We'll be talking about children because, Bright, we've seen children in the pits. I have seen my colleague Justice Bader produce a documentary where a woman actually lost a child who went into mining. To what extent, across board, the country, is this a problem?
Yeah, well, we know that Galamsey is a big problem now, and it becoming a social one, which of course you cannot rule that factor out. No matter how you look at it, people see that as a source of livelihood, and it's an activity that we have allowed as a state to go on for a while now. So people have defined their livelihood around it, and people also think that that is the only source that they can make ends meet. So if we are taking such steps to deal with it, which of course we all acknowledge the fact that Galamsey is not something that is good because of its consequences that it comes with. So once we want to deal with it, then of course, in the process, we also need to acknowledge that there are social implications that we face in the process, which has to do with human rights violations, children's rights, as well as dealing with the labor force itself. So if you want to take that step, which of course we say that is a good step, but in the process, we need to also attach the social bit of it. I know that most of the proposals that have come out now has to do with the intervention of the military. We know how they also administer discipline, which of course we think that one, the state has committed itself to certain protocols. There are certain principles that we can also take out of the equation in dealing with this issue. Where we work, for example, when you go to Chumampunia, Sankore, and then even Tepa, is one of the areas that we have that difficulty, which we have even conducted research to even find out how many children are in all kinds
Because I was coming to the statistics.
Exactly.
Do you have any statistics you
Yes,
want to share?
Yes, of course. We have conducted a research in that area, which we interviewed about 3,992 households in these three districts that we visited, trying to find out the state of child labor situation in that area, looking at the various sectors. We looked at mining, we looked at fishing, we looked at cocoa, and we realized that most children who work in those areas involve themselves in mining, in this case in Galamsey. Because of that, they also abandon school and go there to also do, because of the daily amount that they get. So clearly, it is something that we cannot just say that we want to take action and just leave it that way. But I think that there is also some child protection issue that we have to deal with in there, social protection issues that we have to deal in there, so that at the end of the day, implementing this policy will not be violating some of the things that we have also enshrined, because we have allowed the activity to go on for a while. So once we want to address it now, I don't think that strictly applying the military intervention will be the way to go. So but though we are applying it, I think that we should also be mindful of the social issue that we have to deal with. So you disagree with
Mr. Terry in terms of dealing with the issue?
Dealing with the issue, we agree with it.
In that aspect, in terms of bringing the military and declaring water bodies and their environs military zones?
Yeah, they can declare the place a military zone, but what we are saying is that the intervention or whatever act that the military will put up must also have that lens. They have to put on that lens to ensure that they are dealing with.
So you want to put a human face to it?
Exactly.
All right. Let me let you hold on and go back to Mr. Terrier, because I was talking about the issuance of licenses and the fact that we know that in the past, some of the licenses that have been issued did not go through parliamentary approval, which they should go through. Yeah. So what happens to those ones? And would you say then that the Minerals Commission failed in that aspect of keeping us in check as a country in terms of illegal mining?
No, I wouldn't say Minerals Commission has failed there. When it comes to actually presenting the licenses which have been granted by the minister to Parliament, that one is not done by Minerals Commission. It is done by our sector minister. Even for the large-scale operations, normally what is done is, it is not done on piecemeal basis. For a period, a group of them are put together and then sent to Parliament for ratification. Actually, for a very long time, I would say that with the inception of the small-scale gold mining law, PND's law 218 in 1989, at that time there was actually a directive from government that all small-scale mining license issues are dealt with at the ministerial level. That's why they have not been sent. They have not, and they were not sent to Parliament for any ratification.
All right, Brad, let's come to you again on the issue of statistics. Do we know, for example, how many children in this country are involved in Galamsey? Even if we don't have a national outlook, in certain areas, do we know the numbers involved?
Yeah, we have figures to that effect. If you look at the statistical service survey that they did, clearly point out to you that there are a number of children who are involved in Galamsey. In this case, children who are below the age of 17 years, even below but the majority of them falls within between 12 and 15 years, who are doing that kind of work. So that is from the national figure. If you also pick what we have done, we have identified to 5,000 children within these three districts who are out of school, who are engaged.
5,000 children?
5,000, yeah, over 5,000 children.
Which districts?
And Chumampunia, Tepa, and then Sankore.
Okay.
We are currently looking at Wasa East. There are some districts. Amansie, we are also looking at Amansie now, trying to gather data on it. We are looking at about 7 districts in addition to the 3, so that to make 10, so that at least we can do a clear analysis of what is happening to children in terms of the labor situation that they find themselves in. But as at now, the figure that we have is that we have interviewed 3,992 households, of which the membership of the household is over over 10,000. Then on the basis of that, you realize that the children in that household, they form almost about 5,000 children, which of course, majority of them are not in school. So which also points to the fact that when we went further to do the area that they are involved in terms of the child labor situation, most of them are involved in the mining sector, of which we have identified 119 who are in the worst forms of child labor, which is so serious that we are trying to support them with certain skills in order to maintain them.
When you say so serious, for many of our viewers who have not had the opportunity to even visit a Galamsey site, what are some of these things that children do? And what's the youngest age you've come across?
As 7 years, but they are not in the majority. The majority that we had is between 12 and 15. But you see children as 7, 8, 9 working in that sector. And some of them, they pay them 3 Ghana cedis a day. It depends on your age. Some too, they pay them 10 Ghana cedis, 20 Ghana cedis a day because of the services that they render. And there are certain things that the adult cannot do, you know, in terms of the speed of it. But children can do that and all that. So they try to also engage children to do certain type of work.
Like
fetching the water, washing the clay, you know, to identify all this. And they work under very serious conditions. That is where our focus is. Once the state declares that something is in the worst forms of child labor, then it means that we have exposed the child to all kinds of things that we cannot control at any time. So on that, we have identified 117, which of course we'd want to see how we can help them because their situation is very worse. They don't have any protective material that they work with, but everything is, they have exposed them to all the chemicals. The environment is not conducive for them. Anything at all can happen to them and all that. Even if the police comes in and they want to do arrest, these children will not be spared. And these are the things that we are talking about. But what we are concerned about has to do with the various discussions that has gone on so far in terms of the actions that government want to take. As a state, we have signed certain conventions and protocols which demands that periodically we have to report to certain countries in terms of the labor situation that we have in this country, and then the step that we are taking to deal with those issues. But Galamsey is one of the areas that have been identified, which of course, when we are taking any intervention at all, we should also take that into consideration. But all the discussions in terms of the intervention that government want to take, the issue of child protection has not emerged so much, which of course, for us, we find it as a problem because if you have, you have ratified the UN Convention on the Right of the Child, you have the Children's Act in place, you've signed the protocols, you signed compact with the US government, you've signed all kinds of protocols, and you are taking such action that you yourself as a state, you have allowed to go on. Then of course, we expect that aspect also must come to play, so that at the end of the day, you are providing safety for children, you are also putting them under the social protection safety net, so that parents who engage themselves in that kind of things would also face certain penalties and all that. But we are only interested in the street sense approach in terms of getting the people out of it and as to what will happen to them, especially when it comes to children. The state has not demonstrated that. That's why we think that whatever the state is doing, we are so much in favor of what the state want to do in terms of dealing with the issue because it's destroying our water bodies, which is also another area of child protection. It is also causing some health implications for our children, which of course we need to also deal with that. But in dealing with the main issue, I think that the state must also put on the child protection lens in order to identify the things that they can do, even take statistics on children who are involved in this sector, and then on the basis of that, the state can design certain intervention to address the issues facing children, because most parents that we interviewed during the exercise were saying, of course, we cannot confirm that whether it is an excuse or it's a genuine case, which some of them, of course, we can conclude that it's genuine, that they are doing this because they want their children to go to school. You know, so it has a social issue that we also have to deal with. So once they want to take the action, as I've said, we are not against it, but we think that once they want to do it, whether it be the military, the police, the Mineral Commission, or the ministry itself must also take into consideration issues concerning children. By so doing, they themselves can identify these children and then put them under the social safety net, because we have a lot of social intervention programs that we can also put these children on.
So, Mr. Pia, has the state failed the children?
Yeah, to large extent, because there are certain action that government takes that you yourself realize that government is not so much paying attention to children the way we think that they should. Because if you are taking action that involves the environment, then of course there should be, from the word go, you'd have to recognize that there are children there and you need to protect them. When you look at the government want to enter into partnership with the private sector to even develop the Efwa Seladan Park, which of course comes with a certain commercial activities, which is going to limit certain children having access to it. So when you add all these things up, you realize that government interest in protecting the environment for the welfare of children is limited. But however, we know that there are certain policies, new policies that the state we've passed, and seeing how best we can also ensure that we protect children. So we need to be seeing some of this integration in the decisions that we make, especially when the decision relates to the social environment and it relates to activity when it comes to the labor force and all that. By so doing, yes, we can say that state institutions and agencies are being responsible towards children. They are taking actions that also address needs of children. If we do that, I think that, of course, children will live in a safer place. So
you're calling for integration in terms of dealing with the menace. Mr. Terry, I saw you shaking your head. You have a reaction to what you were saying?
I did, yes. I was really shaking my head off. When Bright was talking about protocols. I am actually giving the signal now. If we want to bring this kind of protocols, these problems about galamsey will never get solved in this country. Look, recently when Professor Frimpong Boateng actually went to Côte d'Ivoire,
yes,
the way the people reacted to him, you see, when you are talking about diplomacy, I think the French people, they are the best. But the way that they reacted, I can assure you that I will not be surprised to hear one morning that Air Force from Côte d'Ivoire has actually made an incursion into Ghana to protect the Biar River. Water is life. And now, I've seen some water modeling. Between now and by, say, 2030, between now and 2030, Ghana, if we don't take care, we are going to import water, even to bath. And the one who predicted the Second World War also predicted that the Third World War will be fought over water. So for me, I'm very passionate about water. And the way particularly the foreigners have come in actually to induce our people to start destroying our bodies. And then we talk about protocols. If you want to bring protocols at the central team to deal with this galamsey issue, then you might as well stop. It will never happen.
All right, Mr. Terry, but his argument, if I got him right, was to put a certain face to dealing with the issue, which is the human face as well. And for him, he commented on the military intervention per se, which, well, a lot of people have argued that, well, we may have to lose lives in this fight.
I must say that, I must say that the approach is supposed to be a multi-layered approach.
Okay.
A hard portion and a softer portion. A soft portion, for me, I think it had to be sustained by the military. The softer portion, somebody was arguing that, what about now if we throw the galamsey people onto the street, what are they going to do?
Exactly.
For a living? Look, I think recently the government has started a program of that food for planting or whatever. We can actually model something around what used to be the case for the worker brigade. All these areas that have been destroyed, you can reclaim all these areas, use these same people, then they will go there and be planting in the oil palm with the assistance of the agronomists and the agri-scientists.
Okay.
So that even by that, we are actually even creating another economic activity for these areas. We are not going to push anybody onto the ground. Those who are brought in all these excavators, we can even salvage most of these excavators, send them up north, use them for the one community, one dam construction. Go and use them there. Yes. And then the bulldozers and the rest, take them to the rural areas for the rural road construction. Nobody is actually going to be taking office daily bread.
Mr. Terry, but you see, the issue of military intervention is not new. We know that the previous government started something like that. Now,
I'm not cutting you short. No. Sorry, I'm not cutting you short. The reason I'm saying that the military, that's what I'm saying, that you should have a process where you take the political view off your head.
But you see, that's where I'm coming to, because in some of these instances and in some of these places, my colleague Latif Idris visited Asamama, and one of the Galamseyers told him, well, we've seen this before. They come in here, the military and the police, after 1 month, 2 months, they don't come back again. And the argument is that some of them actually get there and they realize how much money you can make for this and start themselves scrambling for concessions. So we don't know if those allegations are true. But the issue is not only a political issue. It is also about people seeing a need to make money and survive and get a living.
Yeah, you are right, Benis. But you see, it depends upon how you are going to design the process. You know, previously, when the military or the security agents were going in, they were going with the politicians. This time, I am not interested in seeing political leadership leading any such process. It should be a total military intervention for this area. That's why I said it is going to be a multi-layered approach. The harder one and then the softer one. Once you go by that, I have a very strong conviction that indeed we'll be able to solve this problem once and for all. And now that the rains are setting, between now and the end of May, if we are not able to make so much impact, I think we will still be failing.
All right, so there you can see in your shot some children who are actually involved in Galamsey. So,
but I just want to touch on some of
you want to react to what he's... All right, quickly.
Touch on it, not necessarily to react to it, to some of the things that Mr. Tevia raised. He is in a position of authority, and the Minerals Commission have been set up to do what is happening now for so many years. But it took a political decision to get to this level, and then also getting the media pledging their support to deal with. Are you in any
way suggesting the Minerals Commission couldn't do their work?
Of course, that is it, because it's now a political. It took the minister to make a pronouncement before we are seeing all these reactions towards this issue, and then the proposal that we are given. And knowing who Mr. Tevia is, I know he's somebody. I know him from afar, and I know that when it comes to certain things, he takes certain action. So I'm not surprised at the way he's talking. And I'm sure that probably there will be certain instances that he has taken decision that it took a political will for him to even either withdraw or push certain things. So you cannot take away the politics out of this issue. And what we are saying is that whether it is the involvement of the military or whatever discussion that they are going to have or decision that they are going to make in respect to that, we cannot also take away the social aspect of it. We have signed these protocols, and the protocols are not saying that when people are causing harm to the environment, we should not deal with them. But however, in dealing with that issue, you'd also need to take approach that will not lead to the violation of people's rights in that environment. And he clearly articulated that, for instance, if they are going to deal with the issue, they are going to also have a program where they are going to plant this thing that is going to give work for them to do another. That is another issue that's another area that they can look at it. But for the entry point, you are going to deal with people, and people also have rights that we need to protect. So in the process of dealing with them, there's certain approach that you have to give to it. But those are the things that we are talking about.
Well, we may have done this issue of rights, and we've gotten where we are. So maybe
for me, right, I've been with us since the beginning of this, the existence of life.
I
appreciate that is how I see it.
But the awareness of it has not always been.
Because you see, the law provides that minerals belongs to the state. It's not individual property. Even if you have a land and there's minerals under it, beneath it, it belongs to the state.
Yes.
And it is the Mineral Commission or whichever institution that gives license for them to operate. And once you are given license, there are certain regulations that comes with it. So if as a state, you have allowed people to explore that area for a long time to the extent that people have defined their livelihood around it, then you cannot also just go in radically and just decide that you want to deal with it once and for all. No, you have allowed it. So if you want to reverse it, then there's also an approach that you have to go to it. One, to deal with the people in a way that their dignity will be protected, their privacy would also be recognized in the process. And in this case, you are not only dealing with human beings, you are also dealing with children who are also human beings, and by law, we have extended their right beyond the ordinary, yes, beyond the ordinary person. So, and you know very well, and statistics, national statistics has confirmed that children are involved in this kind of activity. Okay. So when you are taking decision, you'd also have to factor that in the approach that you design.
Okay, but let's talk about child rights. Child Rights International, because we here have done a lot of stories that deal with it, and we just showed it to viewers. Children who are dealing in Galamsey, they're not protected from the hazardous chemicals, and even from some of these dangers. We hear people dying in this. But as an organization, what are you doing to help deal with the problem? For example, in educating parents to let them know, look, you can make money, you know, in other ways, rather than send your child to this pit and allowing your child to be exposed to these dangers and the chemicals, which could result in some diseases later in their lives.
Yes, we 6 years ago we implemented a project on child labor in the cocoa sector in the Suhun Krabwakota area there, trying to also design a new livelihood for people, because we realized that cocoa, there's always a lean season when it comes to cocoa. And then gradually we are adopting what we call the community-based approach in terms of dealing with child labor issues. So even if you see the statistics that we have, though it's a cocoa project that we are doing, but because of the community-based approach that we're giving to it, we have identified children who do not directly work in the cocoa sector, but work in other sectors that we can describe as child labor. Identify their parent, you know, putting them into groups and then supporting them, so that the intention is that once we do that, they would also earn money, one, place their children in school and give them a better life, which we are doing. So with this research that I spoke about and the one that I've carried now, we have identified 119 that we are currently supporting, and majority of them are in the money sector. So these are the things that we are doing as a way of also resolving the issue, so that parents will begin to see the alternative in terms of the livelihood support that they have to give to their children. So that is what we are doing. But I believe that if the state take up this and say that it is a program that we want to do, I can tell for a fact that, or if Mineral Commission want to do that, I can tell for a fact that there are a lot of international NGOs that will come in to give them the support that they need to place children in a place that they deserve, so that they can have a better life.
All right, Mr. Ponsateri, another angle to this whole Galamsey menace has to do with the fact that some of these people, because they are not registered, what they mine, what they get, there's no way of monitoring. They smuggle some of these minerals out of the country, and you're losing millions out of this. In fact, we know and we've heard that some of the Indians who trade in gold have actually now moved into the bushes because they want to get first-hand access to these miners. What is the Commission also doing in terms of, while we are protecting the environment, also protecting the resource that we are supposed to get some money from?
Okay, Menace, before I react to that, I think I have a quick comment here for Bright. Bright was talking about the fact that whatever that you do should not actually infringe on people's rights. Those people are infringing on my rights. They are denying me access to good quality water. So if you deny me that right, won't it be an equalization for me also to know that person is right?
But Mr. Ponsateri, the argument will be two wrongs don't make a right.
Hold on. Yes, two wrongs don't make any right. And that is why people should see sense. You see, at some point in time, in my village, whenever there's bushfire, what we do is we set an alternate bushfire to counter the major one that is coming out. These people are poisoning the waters, and then they are killing millions of people on a daily basis. They are killing millions of people on a daily basis. So if a few of them also have to fall so that I protect my water body, I bet you I'll go in for that one. Coming back to the gold that the foreigners are actually mining. You know, the basis for government actually coming out to regularize the small-scale gold mining as far back in 1989, May 1989, PND's Law 218, was that a study was made. And at that time, there was also a magazine, I think it's a British magazine, South Magazine. In 1985, he quoted that more than $50 million worth of gold were exported by Togo. And if you go to Togo, they don't even have a pit even the size of my palm to mine gold. That really was a reawakening call to government to ensure that we actually regularize, so that you put things on its proper perspective for the country to benefit from it. With the recent issue, talking about the Indians, the Chinese, and the rest, particularly for the Chinese, now if we go to any of the licensed gold buyers, if we go to PMMC, go through their books and see if a single Chinese has even sold even a gram of gold in this country. So the gold that the Chinese people are producing, how is the gold going out of this country? That is a question that I want all of us really to answer. And I bet you they are not going with ounces of gold. They are going with kilos of gold. And how is the gold going out of this country? I think the time has come that for me, we should do away with diplomacy on this particular issue. For me, if it means I will act ruthlessly, but to save the water bodies in this my country, I'm ready to go in for that.
Bright, your final words. He doesn't agree with your diplomatic approach to solving this problem, but we run out of time, so your final words.
Yes, well, but what I can say is that, well, as a nation, we've made commitment. We have to protect the water bodies. We have to protect life for the well-being of people as well as children. So whatever step that we take, I think that we need to also integrate these kind of things in our approach so that we don't do things that at the end of the day would also breed another social issue that we cannot deal with. Introduction of LIP, why did we even introduce that? Because there are people in the environment that cannot live a certain life on the basis of that we introduced that. And these things that we see today, it did not start, Galamsey did not start today, to the extent that people can buy equipment to do that. Then it means that we have made the environment so loose that anybody at all thinks that they can participate in there. But it also has to do with human life. So once we want to do that, we want to protect the water bodies and save life and all that, I think that the approach must be in a certain way that we can also protect the right of children, and then their dignity and their privacy must also be protected in the process, which of course we will pursue it in all angles to ensure that in the approach that we give to it, we protect our children. The lives of children cannot be taken for granted in any decision-making process. So whatever it is that within our means that we will take that step.
Well, thank you very much. But before you go, Mr. Mponsateria, we know there's a government delegation going to Akwatia today, all in the fight against Galamsey. Could you briefly tell us what they're going to do?
Okay, Benny.
Expected to do there?
The mission of the minister, which is Int'l, is primarily actually to interact with the diamond winners. You know, we have the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme, and periodically a team actually comes down to audit what we are doing. The team is in town, so you also want to make sure that what you set up there is still working right. But our honorable minister, once he's in that environment, will not only tailor himself only to the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme. I think he actually set a deadline for all illegal activities to cease. I think he has been an apostle. Continuously, he keeps on preaching. But after he has finished with the preaching, I think the followers will really need to act. And that is what all of us are now looking forward to. That his days that he gave for the seizure or for these illegal activities will come to an end. Then the battle will start from there.
And if they don't act, you advocate like Jesus whipped the people in the church.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me to have this conversation. Mr. Mponsateria, he is Deputy Chief Inspector of Mines in charge of policy at the Minerals Commission, and Bright Appiah is Executive Director of Child Rights International. We've been talking about the issue of illegal mining. We're still on this course to fight the menace. You're still watching News Desk. Business is next.